Today on Ag News Daily.
When one market gets higher than the other, like if soybeans are stronger than corn, people tend to hedge soybeans a year in advance or corn a year in advance. So what we do as brokers is say, wow, corn's really strong for next year versus beans. Let's be aggressive in corn. So if a soybean for next year or corn for next year is overvalued versus the other, definitely hedge and protect that one. And be a big if, but if corn was to slide another $1, you're going to see massive losses in 25. And as you all know, University of Illinois just put out those numbers this week. They showed some pretty hefty losses already for 25.
Well, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. Well, how's Delaney doing?
I'm good, Tanner. How are you today?
I'm good. You should appreciate the shirt I wore for you today.
Yeah. All right. I like it. I think our listeners will like it too.
I hope so. Definitely like to have a little fun with them. Every once in a while I sneak in one of those outfits that Delaney doesn't approve of, but it's still all fun and games. You're out on the road, it looks like.
I am. I've been this week in North Carolina with a group that I work with called the Global Farmer Network. And yesterday we had a tour of BASF's facility here in North Carolina, their greenhouse facility, and some of the research that they do out here in the Research Triangle Park. So that was really interesting.
How's the weather been out there?
Sticky. So that's not been ideal, but the people out here are probably used to that humidity. Maybe not. It's apparently been a little worse this year than usual. So,
well, I don't feel like you missed much. You would have been just as sticky here in Iowa. It looks like most of the U.S. Corn Belt had some of the same feelings, but there could be a break in the heat for the U.S. Corn Belt next week. A front brought severe weather across the western Midwest Wednesday into Thursday. It moved east, and part of the East Coast now is seeing that weather today on Friday. We brought scattered clusters of showers and thunderstorms and a potential for more severe weather. But despite that front, temperatures are going to continue to be hot next week. So that front brought the break in temperatures, even though those showers could limit the overall highs like it did this past week. Overnight lows will continue to be mostly in the upper 60s and 70s. A cold front will drop into the northern area next weekend with milder air that will be pushed into the region. Showers will occur along this front as well. Despite all the chances for showers, though, they will only come in clusters, and probably most people will get missed. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. We know we have pretty adequate soil moisture here in our part of the state, at least. Seems like we might be able to get to the finish line, but there are some areas, Delaney, that are in flash flood warnings still, and others, of course, that are just hoping to get another rain.
Well, Tanner, taking a look at how that weather is affecting crop conditions, there were some slight changes to corn and soybean ratings over the past week. Not huge changes, but just enough here to put some question marks around production. As of last week, 68% of the corn is rated good to excellent, with 77% of the crop silking and 30% at the dough stage, ahead of the respective 5-year averages. 67% of U.S. soybeans are rated good to excellent, with 77% of the crop blooming and 44% at the pod setting stage, both faster than average, and 82% of winter wheat is harvested compared to the normal rate of 80%. 74% of spring wheat is rated good to excellent, a decrease of 3%, with 94% of the crop headed and 1% harvested, both behind most years. But Tanner, as you think about corn and soybeans both being ahead of average for dough making and pod setting, do you think that's going to give us a little bit earlier start to harvest season?
Yeah, it's interesting because you also have seen a lot of producers begin to apply fungicide, or at least have already got that task taken care of. And I think with, in our area at least, a lot of insect pressure, you're probably going to see some of these products being applied, which may extend that growing season and push that back. But I would say there's a chance some people might be able to go early. And I look forward to our conversation today with Tommy Grisafi to learn about if he thinks there'll be any early basis opportunities for our listeners as well. Well, let's jump into the next story here. Growth Energy, the nation's largest biofuel trade association, this week filed notice of intent to sue the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, regarding their agency's anticipated failure to meet its statutory deadline for issuing the 2026 renewable volume obligation under the Renewable Fuel Standard. The EPA is required by law to finalize the RFS volumes by 2026, or for 2026 by the 1st of November here in 2024. However, the White House has recently published Spring 2024 Unified Agenda that indicates the agency will not finalize their RVO until December of 2025, more than a year late. The law doesn't change just because the EPA gives advance notice of its failure to comply, said the Growth Energy CEO, Emily. America's biofuel producers and their farm partners rely on the certainty of the RFS to provide order and make investments that bear fruit in the form of lower fuel costs to consumers, more jobs in rural communities, and lower carbon emissions. So I think that was something, Delaney, that we saw coming down the pipeline. Of course, when we reported on that early notice as to this deadline not being met.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's coming as a surprise, but still a little bit of a blow to agriculture. However, on the flip side, this week, the USDA's Risk Management Agency is updating the Enhanced Coverage Option, or the ECO program, for those of you that take that as a crop insurance option for next year in 2025. Those updates include an increase in premium support to 65%, which the USDA says makes the coverage more affordable for the crops covered. Rich Morrison with the NAU Country Insurance says Midwest farmers should benefit from this. According to Morrison, the eco subsidy will be the same as the supplemental coverage option subsidy. Before, it was about 20 points less, and this jump in the subsidy level will make that higher coverage more palatable and increase, hopefully, the farmer participation of it. There will also be increased premium support that will go into effect for the winter wheat planted this fall, so they will be able to apply in a little bit earlier than 2025. And Morrison says that this is a way for the USDA to provide more risk management while reducing potentially some of those disaster aid payments that we've seen, such as CFAP, WIP, and others. So, Tanner, we'll see how this is going to play out here. Potentially, it sounds like funding for this could come out of the Commodity Credit Corporation to help adjust for these additional payments and for some of those additional premium levels, or coverage levels, I should say, that are coming in from farmers.
Yeah, again, something for us to watch and see how it will play out. Other reductions that we saw were in the workforce. John Deere itself reduced its workforce by more than 2,000 employees over the last couple of months in response to economics and its vision for what they have in their plan for becoming a manufacturer of machinery still, but putting higher value towards technology. Deere issued a statement addressing its reduction in force activities. As the largest global manufacturer of agricultural equipment, John Deere, like many others in our industry, faces significant economic challenges. Rising operational and manufacturing costs and reduced customer demand, including a 20% decline in sales from 2023 to 2024, was included in that statement. It is true that John Deere's agricultural customer base is a hard hit. The USDA forecasts that the farm sector income will be $116.1 billion, down nearly $70 billion from the income record set in 2022. Those numbers are reflected in John Deere's performance. Deere is projecting its net sales and production in precision ag segment will be down 20% to 25% for the fiscal year 24, with declines projected across nearly all of its markets, including U.S., Canada, Europe, and South America. Deere has been finding strategic opportunities to move their production lines and some of their components to other areas. For example, in August of 2022, Deere announced that it was moving its cab production from Waterloo, Iowa to Ramos Component Works in Mexico. That is a move that is scheduled to be completed this year. And just last month, Deere announced that it's purchasing land in Ramos to build a plant that will produce their mid-frame skid steer loaders and compact track loaders. This new manufacturing capacity moving to Ramos from Deere's Dubuque, Iowa Works plant. Of course, we've had a lot of people weigh in on this topic, Delaney, but Chad Hart, an ag economist from Iowa State University, believes that Deere will remain a large U.S. employer, but the company is increasingly a technology company, albeit technology that's mounted to heavy pieces of equipment that go in the field. Deere would seem to likely reshape its employee talent base in the U.S. to fit this part of their vision for the future, rather than that of the assembly. So it's quite interesting there to see these topics come to place and how economists are continuing to review these headlines and see what that means for the future of ag.
Well, here's an interesting one for the future of agriculture. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association has confirmed that the Department of Defense will not move forward on their proposal to look at the applications of lab-grown protein for human consumption. NCBA previously made a statement back in June that it was concerned about how the DoD was sponsoring research grants that would develop lab-grown meat done by manufacturing company Biomade. The DoD can and should be on the cutting edge of science, according to the NCBA's Senior Director of Government Affairs. They said, however, there's a big difference between industrial or defense applications and the food we put in our bodies. U.S. farmers and ranchers are more than capable of meeting the military's need for high-quality protein, but the trade association noted that it continues to work with agricultural partners in Congress to have several amendments in the fiscal year 2025 Defense Appropriations Bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, and fiscal year 2025 Agriculture Appropriations Bills aimed at preventing lab-grown meat from being part of military meals, Tanner.
Yeah, it is an interesting one for the future of consideration. USDA also has issued one-time payments totaling about $2 billion to farmers and ranchers and forest landowners across the country who did not receive equitable access to federal resources before the start of the Biden administration. The funds are coming from the Inflation Reduction Act's Discrimination Financial Assistance Program, or DFAP. About 58,000 applicants, over 43,000 farmers and ranchers from all 50 states, including the District of Columbia and the U.S. territories, will receive some type of assistance, according to the USDA. Over 23,000 people who currently or previously had a farming, ranching, or forest land operation are getting between $10,000 and $500,000. Over 20,000 individuals who plan to have a farming or ranching operation but said they were unable to do so because of the challenges in getting a USDA loan will receive between $3,500 and $6,000 in assistance. All payments will be taxable, but Vilsack said, "My hope is that this financial assistance will help many farmers stay on their farms, contribute to our nation's food supply, and continue to do what they love to do. For those who are not able to farm or launch their farms, I hope these funds provide some measure of assistance to allow them opportunities to help themselves and their families." So quite an interesting route there. Seemed like a pretty quiet application process, but certainly a lot of folks took advantage of that. But Delaney, it's time for our interview today. I teased it a little bit earlier. It's our pleasure to have back on the podcast for at least for quite some time, Mr. Tommy Grisafi. Let's get into that.
Well, we're welcomed back here by Tommy Grisafi with ATI Pro Media. Tommy, welcome to the new and improved show format. We're excited to have you on today to chat markets.
I like it. I went to bed watching some of your shorts. They're wonderful.
Well,
Thank you to our sponsors, Riverside and every other streaming software. Pretty cool how technology's changed, isn't it?
It is. We've been watching your show, too, for quite some time, so it's fun to do some cross-promotion here. But, Tommy, as we take a look at the markets, I want to talk first here, corn. I was looking at markets this week, last week. Corn's lost something like 30 cents over the past week, so we've seen a pretty fast downward decline here. What's going on that's putting so much pressure on the corn markets right now?
Pretty much the American farmer's awesome, and that sums it up. People like your husband who sell products that make people grow more bushels are the problem. And so if we could only get him to stop selling stuff that makes great bushels, we wouldn't have this problem. Technology's changed. I was at the Commodity Classic this year, and I did a special on AI, and if NVIDIA is going to go up 300% a year, because all this technology, that technology is going to hit agriculture, and it has. I mean, there's parts that NVIDIA makes that are on John Deere planters. And when you show a historical chart of corn prices from 1930 to, projected 2030, they're doing nothing but going up. And there was a time in the early 1900s where corn yields didn't go up for like 30 years. And then you're too young to remember this, but there was a thing invented maybe 80 some years ago called a hybrid. And that single-handedly changed the future of corn. And nobody who's making corn seed or planting corn is trying to grow less bushels. And so we're constantly fighting this battle where prices go up, we overproduce, and we did that. We had a double whammy of it because the market went up on inflation, then started to come down, then Russia invaded Ukraine, and that massively distorted prices for the world. So it created not a false market, that was the real market that year, but it incentivized world farmers that even if you're not too good at farming, you should really get into this because it's really profitable. Now we're going completely to the flip side.
So it's simply oversupply is what we're looking at in driving markets right now.
Yeah, way oversupply. And demand's pretty light also. We might very much see picked up demand. Now, I could spin a bull scenario. If you said, what's the bull scenario? I could easily tell you the funds are massively short and demand's going to pick up. But until that happens, we have today's prices. Upon filming this, we're trading $3.99 corn futures, December corn futures at the board.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a shock maybe to farmers that we're trading under $4 here after having so many years of above $4 corn. But Tommy, as you look at risk management, knowing the situation we're in today, how are you advising the farmers you work with?
Not to sneeze on live air. You have clients who are hedgers, and the people who hedge like to hedge. People like to forward sell. Sometimes you forward sell and hedge and you lose in your hedging account. Sometimes you forward sell and the market goes up, and people don't like that feeling. The opposite of that feeling is the feeling we have right now. Hey, I'm holding some 23 crop. I have very little done for 24, and I plan on being a farmer in 25, and I'm burning through my operating note. It's no secret. Just yesterday, Kinsey Planters announced 193 people laid off. We have the layoffs from John Deere. We're seeing the camper industry go through a massive shift. We're seeing Polaris announce that all the toys, the whole toy sector, whether it be the toys for farms or, around the farm, or the big time toys like the planters and tractors, they're all on sale. And the farmer or the end user who wants to go buy those goods is dealing with a $350 corn crop and a $950 soybean crop. So we're asking our producers to stay diligent, to keep hedging, but now not so much making sales but more with that put. So start thinking about 25. You do not have crop insurance on 25, and that's your greatest risk. So and be a big if, but if corn was to slide another $1, you're going to see massive losses in 25. And as you all know, University of Illinois just put out those numbers this week on that Illinois document stuff they put out, and they showed some pretty hefty losses already for 25.
Yeah, it is certainly an environment that is making a lot of our listeners concerned about where this market is headed. How has the soybean market been driving folks to maybe consider switching crop rotations for next year?
That's a great question. Because I don't farm, I can't really say that one farmer should do this or that, but I do understand the economics of it. And right as harvest starts, seed salesmen and women jump in the combines and start pushing and promoting their product. I do tend to know that when one market gets higher than the other, like if soybeans are stronger than corn, people tend to hedge soybeans a year in advance or corn a year in advance. So what we do as brokers is say, wow, corn's really strong for next year versus beans. Looking at the ratio, let's be aggressive in corn. Because what often happens is we start off strong at this time of the year, but by the time we actually plant or harvest it, that ratio completely switches, to your point, because people actually made that rotation. So if a soybean for next year or corn for next year is overvalued versus the other, definitely hedge and protect that one.
What about the wheat complex? Do you think we'll see acres pulled into more wheat production next year, seeing some of the strength that we've seen in those markets?
Oh, that's a great question. Wheat, aka poverty grass, is something that's grown all over the world, and it's not profitable either. Now, some people, because of their ground, have to plant wheat regardless if they want to plant wheat or not. They just have to. And my clients up in the Dakotas, the ones who plant wheat, there's a couple of reasons to plant wheat. Up in the Red River Valley, in that area, it's because they have sugar beets. And then in western North Dakota, it's because they have to, because their ground's not fit enough to grow soybeans or corn or anything else. So people who grow wheat, it's usually because the ground can't get the big corn acres and bean acres, and so it's really one of their only alternatives. It's in general, when you look at the overall acres in America, they are trending down, that we plant a little less acres sometimes, but the yield on all these acres is improving tremendously. So I don't think any rotation is going to save the market or anything else. It's sometimes you see things on social media that, hey, if every farmer just didn't plant 100 acres, that would make the market rally, but they could never get that organized to do it. There was a thing on the Facebook market page, and it kind of made sense. It was cute. Hey, if each one of us bought 2 futures tonight, the market would explode. And it probably would, but they would buy them, and then the market would go down and they'd puke them lower. So there's really nothing bigger than the market, not a group of farmers, not a hedge fund. The market is what it is. And if you don't believe it, that's the great function of the market. So if you or any viewers or listeners on your podcast or show say corn shouldn't be here, you're more than welcome to go buy the board.
That's a good way to definitely put somebody in a position to where they can really speak for what they're feeling. Now, we know that the weather has been fairly nice to growers in the U.S. How do our production partners overseas look like, especially South America?
Oh, great question. South America is just harvesting their second crop, safrinha. That's going extremely well. Yields aren't as great as they would like, but there are yields. And as you know, they keep planting more and more and more. So it doesn't all need to be perfect to have a crop down there. Also, when you take it over to Ukraine, they are experiencing dryness. And you would think that would give us a bid or make us rally, but it just hasn't been. And that's been very emotional, knowing the folks over there aren't quite having the crop. We had the earlier big rally in wheat, very impressive, $1.70 rally in wheat in the board, the KC and the mini. And with that, we're much lower than those levels, or at least where we started at those levels. So even with a Russian production problem, with both a frost and a drought, wheat is lower than when we started to evaluate or started to notice that Russia had a problem.
Tommy, I know you're more of a grain guy, but we got to talk livestock as well. Live cattle continue to see elevated strength here. When's the train going to slow down on this track?
Well, it did a little bit the other day. We had a horrible day in cattle. Thursday and Friday might follow through. The stock market's definitely rolled over. The Nikkei market, not something we talk about, but Japan raised rates for the first time since the 80s or something crazy. Now since the 90s or 2000s. But the Nikkei went down 6%. It's been a long time since we talked about a stock market going down 6%. That would be a pretty significant move here in the Dow Jones. So that would be equivalent to us being down a couple thousand points. And we had a bad day in the stock market yesterday. We're starting off today having a bad day. So this shift, as interest rates drift lower, you'd think that'd be really good for markets, but the markets are readjusting in a big way. Cattle, for the first time in a long time, really took a risk-off approach yesterday, and I think some people were terribly bothered by that. I don't think that's just the start. I think we can go another $5 to $10 lower here in live cattle.
When you say risk-off approach, clarify what that means for everybody tuning in today.
Sure, that's a great question. I say that as if everyone understands. When a guy like me looks over at my quote board, and maybe I have 40 markets in the world, sometimes you wake up and the whole quote board's red. And you'll see like the bonds are up, the dollar's up, and 38 other things are red. And red usually means selling in my world. So you would say, wow, it's a risk-off day. Stocks are down, copper's down, gold's down. Now, in today's case, it's not like that. Actually, gold's at all-time highs today as the stock market's having a bad day. But maybe a better way than saying risk-off is a risk adjustment day. And yesterday was a risk adjustment day where people, money, funds really adjusted. Not you and I adjusting our 401k because we put $10,000 in it. We're talking about multi-billion dollar funds swooshing in and out of commodity markets, bond markets, stock markets. And as a producer of livestock or row crops, you probably have heard this is happening, but I get to see it live every day. So it's a little different approach.
Tommy, one more question to that. And why are they taking this risk-off approach? Is it because they're potentially predicting an economic crisis, or what's the bigger story at play?
Right. So in agriculture, you're already seeing your canary in the coal mine. You're seeing the John Deere's, the Kinsey planters, everyone else. It's just starting. The consumers tapped out, even though the stock market was at almost all-time highs here recently. The consumers really starting to have a hard time. It's back to school season. People are paying for everything. After 2-3 years of really intense inflation and prices of everything going up, food, insurance, and every level of your life, the consumers really tapped out. You're seeing consumer debt high. People who are rich are still extremely rich. It's everyone below that. So there's such an incredible amount of wealth that's held by about 10-15% of the world. It's the 85% who've really been taxed by this new economic system of what inflation is and how it affects us, not just for a day or a week, but we're going on multi-years here of high inflation.
Well, Tommy, your insights are greatly valued as always, and we know that you've got other places you put your content. So would you take a moment to plug how our listeners can get in touch with you if they already don't follow along?
Yeah, sure. Just go to the Advanced Trading website. There's a contact us. We go live every day at 9 o'clock, ATI Pro Media. will be live today and every day. Then we put out premium content. We have a charge for service where we put out videos daily, actionable text alerts, and a morning email that comes out at 5:30. So if people are looking for a good little chunk of information at 5:30, a text when the markets are moving, and then a little educational video every day. That's you go to www.atipromedia.com.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Tommy.
Well, Tanner, I feel like Tommy covered the markets pretty well there, so there's not too much to add to today's market discussion, but certainly appreciate Tommy coming on and sharing his updates with all of our listeners.
That's right. Listeners, don't be afraid to reach out to us if you've got guest interview suggestions like Tommy. We appreciate those. You can find Ag News Daily on all social media platforms, including YouTube right now. So if you've got some time you want to kill and you're not watching the Olympics, turn us on. But what do you say, Delaney? Should we let them go for today?
Let's let him go.